The world watches with bated breath, anxiously awaiting any sign of progress in the ongoing conflict. As a glimmer of hope emerges from the ashes of the Ukraine conflict, the international community holds its collective breath. The United States has put forward a ceasefire proposal, a potential roadmap to peace that has been cautiously welcomed by Ukraine. This proposal marks a significant step in diplomatic efforts to resolve the conflict. This development follows a series of high-stakes diplomatic talks, including a meeting between U.S. envoy Steve Witkoff and Russian President Vladimir Putin. These discussions have been intense and complex, reflecting the gravity of the situation. While details of the proposal remain closely guarded, its mere existence offers a beacon of hope in a conflict that has brought untold suffering and geopolitical instability. The proposal is seen as a critical opportunity to halt the violence and begin the process of rebuilding. The proposal has been met with cautious optimism from the White House, with officials indicating that the two sides are closer to peace than ever before. This cautious optimism is tempered by the recognition of the many challenges that lie ahead. However, the situation remains highly fluid, with Russia yet to formally agree to the ceasefire. The Kremlin's response will be crucial in determining the next steps in this delicate process. The Kremlin has acknowledged the proposal and expressed a willingness to engage in further discussions, but significant hurdles remain before a lasting peace can be achieved. The path to peace is fraught with obstacles, and both sides will need to make difficult concessions. The international community is closely monitoring the situation, recognizing that the stakes could not be higher. Global leaders are urging both sides to seize this opportunity for peace. The conflict in Ukraine has already had a profound impact on global security and stability, sending shockwaves through the global economy and triggering a humanitarian crisis of immense proportions. The human toll has been devastating, with countless lives lost and millions displaced. A ceasefire, if successfully implemented and upheld by all parties, would be a crucial first step towards ending the bloodshed and finding a diplomatic solution to this complex and multifaceted crisis. It would pave the way for rebuilding and reconciliation. The road ahead is fraught with challenges, and it remains to be seen whether this glimmer of hope can be transformed into a lasting peace. The journey towards peace will require sustained effort, patience, and goodwill from all involved. The world waits with anticipation, hoping that diplomacy will prevail and bring an end to the suffering in Ukraine. The hope is that this ceasefire will be the beginning of a new chapter, one marked by peace and cooperation. The U.S. proposed ceasefire has elicited a range of responses from global leaders, reflecting the complexity and sensitivity of the situation. Former U.S. President Donald Trump, known for his unconventional approach to foreign policy, has expressed cautious optimism, describing recent talks as good and productive. He sees a very good chance for the war to end, urging both sides to seize this opportunity for peace. However, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has voiced skepticism, accusing Putin of using the talks as a delaying tactic while continuing military operations. He has pointed to Russia's extremely difficult and unacceptable conditions for the ceasefire as evidence of their lack of genuine commitment to peace. Zelensky has called for continued international pressure on Russia, particularly from the United States, to ensure that any ceasefire is comprehensive and enforceable. British Labour Party leader Keir Starmer has echoed Zelensky's concerns, emphasizing that Putin cannot be allowed to play games with the lives of Ukrainians. Starmer has called for a serious and enduring peace, monitored by international bodies to prevent any breaches of the ceasefire. He has also proposed a peacekeeping initiative involving up to 25 countries to deter future Russian aggression in the region. The differing views of these leaders underscore the delicate balance that needs to be struck between diplomacy and skepticism. While the international community hopes for a peaceful resolution, it remains wary of Russia's true intentions and its willingness to abide by the terms of any agreement. Vladimir Putin, the enigmatic leader of Russia, has responded to the U.S. ceasefire proposal with a calculated mix of cautious optimism and unwavering resolve. His response, while seemingly open to dialogue, is laden with stipulations that reflect his strategic objectives and long-term vision for the region. While expressing support for the idea of a ceasefire, he has also outlined a series of conditions that he deems non-negotiable. These conditions are not merely tactical but are deeply rooted in Russia's geopolitical aspirations and security concerns. These conditions, which have been met with resistance from Ukraine and its allies, provide insight into Putin's strategic calculations and his vision for a post-ceasefire Ukraine. They reveal a leader who is not willing to compromise on what he perceives as Russia's core interests. Putin has insisted that any ceasefire agreement must include provisions for the recognition of Crimea as part of Russia, a move that has been widely condemned as illegal annexation by the international community. This demand underscores Russia's determination to solidify its control over the region despite international outcry. He has also demanded guarantees for the independence of the self-proclaimed Donetsk and Luhansk People's Republics in eastern Ukraine, further fueling tensions and complicating the path to a negotiated settlement. These regions have been at the heart of the conflict, and their status remains a contentious issue. In addition to these territorial demands, Putin has called for Ukraine to adopt a neutral status, renouncing any aspirations to join NATO or forge closer ties with the West. This demand is particularly significant as it strikes at the heart of the current conflict. Which many analysts believe was sparked by Russia's desire to prevent Ukraine from aligning itself with the West. The prospect of Ukraine joining NATO is seen by Russia as a direct threat to its security and influence in the region. Putin's insistence on Ukrainian neutrality highlights his determination to maintain Russia's sphere of influence in the region. This is not just about Ukraine, it is about Russia's broader strategy to counter Western influence and assert its dominance in Eastern Europe. Putin's conditions for a ceasefire, while potentially offering a path to ending the violence, also raise concerns about the sustainability of any peace agreement. The international community is wary of whether these terms can lead to a lasting peace or merely a temporary halt in hostilities. His demands, if met in full, would represent a significant victory for Russia and a major setback for Ukraine's sovereignty and territorial integrity. The implications of such an agreement would be far-reaching, potentially altering the balance of power in the region. The international community is now faced with the daunting task of finding a compromise that addresses the legitimate security concerns of all parties involved, while upholding the principles of international law and respecting Ukraine's right to self-determination. The road ahead is fraught with challenges, and the stakes could not be higher. As the world grapples with the potential implications of a ceasefire, the stakes couldn't be higher. The international community is on edge, watching closely as diplomatic efforts unfold. The hope is that these talks will lead to a lasting peace, but there is also a pervasive sense of skepticism. Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky has emerged as a vocal skeptic of Russia's true intentions. His stance is not just a political maneuver but a reflection of deep-seated concerns about the future of his nation. He has repeatedly accused Putin of using the ceasefire talks as a smokescreen, a deceptive tactic to buy time and regroup. Zelensky believes that while the world is distracted by the facade of diplomacy, Russia continues its aggressive maneuvers. This ploy, according to Zelensky, allows Russia to wage war under the cover of diplomacy, making it difficult for the international community to respond effectively. Zelensky's concerns, rooted in Russia's past actions and its current military posture, are not without merit. The history of the Russia-Ukraine conflict is fraught with broken promises and unfulfilled agreements. These concerns have resonated with many in the international community, casting a long shadow over the prospects for a lasting peace. The skepticism is palpable, and the stakes are incredibly high. The shadow of doubt looms large, making it difficult to envision a future where peace is not just a temporary pause, but a lasting reality. Zelensky has pointed to Russia's continued military buildup along Ukraine's borders as a clear indication of its true intentions. The presence of troops and military equipment is a stark reminder of the ongoing threat. Additionally, its ongoing offensive operations in the Donbas region serve as evidence that Putin is not negotiating in good faith. The violence in Donbas is a daily testament to the fragility of any proposed ceasefire. He has argued that Russia's demands for a ceasefire, particularly its insistence on Ukrainian neutrality and territorial concessions, are designed to advance its own strategic interests at the expense of Ukraine's sovereignty and territorial integrity. These demands are seen as a way to weaken Ukraine and solidify Russia's influence in the region, rather than a genuine step towards peace. The insistence on such terms has only fueled the belief that Russia is more interested in control than in coexistence. For Ukraine, These terms are unacceptable and represent a significant threat to its future. Furthermore, Zelensky has expressed concerns about Russia's willingness to abide by the terms of any ceasefire agreement. He has cited Russia's annexation of Crimea in 2014 as a glaring example of its disregard for international law. The annexation was a bold move that shocked the world and set a dangerous precedent. It showed that Russia is willing to flout international norms to achieve its goals. Its ongoing support for separatists in eastern Ukraine further exemplifies its tendency to violate agreements when it suits its interests. This support has prolonged the conflict and made peace seem like a distant dream. The pattern of broken ceasefire agreements and military violations has eroded trust and made it difficult to believe in the sincerity of any new agreements. Zelensky's skepticism, shared by many in the international community, highlights the deep mistrust that exists between Ukraine and Russia. This mistrust is a significant barrier to any meaningful progress. The deep-seated mistrust between the two nations is not just a political issue, but a deeply personal one for many citizens. It will be difficult to overcome even if a ceasefire is reached. A ceasefire, while a step in the right direction, is not a guarantee of peace. The underlying issues and mistrust will continue to pose significant challenges. The coming days and weeks will be crucial in determining whether a ceasefire can be successfully implemented and whether it will mark a genuine turning point in the conflict. The world is watching with bated breath. The hope is that diplomacy will prevail and that a new chapter of peace can begin. However, the road ahead is fraught with challenges and uncertainties. The world is watching closely, hoping that diplomacy will prevail, but also bracing for the possibility that the fighting may continue. The stakes are incredibly high, and the outcome is far from certain. If the fighting continues, it will further deepen the humanitarian crisis, causing more suffering and displacement. The humanitarian crisis is already severe, with countless families displaced and in need of aid. Continued conflict will only exacerbate these issues. The international community is on high alert, ready to intervene if necessary. The hope is for peace, but the reality may require a more robust response to prevent a wider confrontation.